Tuesday, August 30th, 2022, starting at 6 p.m. Do a roll call.
Absolutely. Don Walsh.
Here.
David Valber.
Here.
Jim James.
Here. All right, let's just rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. We're basically going to go over several items that we had discussed at our last meeting. First of which was, the bulky waste collection, which we were running through a number of different options about. And I don't know if
I'll give a brief update. Really, the update is that we're still gathering information from other towns, like we talked about last time, looking at a variety of options. Obviously, unless the committee has thought about it more and would like us to charge ahead with any one in particular. But we are looking for, as we said at the last meeting, what other communities are doing and trying to get some costs around some of the options. So we don't have an answer since the last meeting we had.
And what's the drop dead date we really need to make this by January?
Yeah, we intentionally brought this to you pretty early.
Yeah.
I would say that, again, depending on which option we go with, we haven't traditionally budgeted for the every 2-year bulky waste. We've kind of done a special appropriation,
right?
Because it's kind of hard to budget for something that you're not sure you're going to do every year.
Right.
A lot of the other options, we want to know by budget season. So February, March, of course, is when I present it to you, and of course you adopt by April. That'd be kind of the drop dead if you want to build something into next year's budget.
Okay.
So I do think we have plenty of time, but we'd like to. That's kind of why we wanted to bring it forward now, in case there was any large change in what the ultimate bulky waste solution is.
Well, I know that Georgia had said something about AJ not wanting to do the whole town at once because of staffing issues and truck issues. Have you had any more conversations with him about that? Or
I haven't since our meeting, but I know for the last couple bulky waste, that's been a common theme of his. It's just difficult in a 5 or 6 week period to try to pick up everything else.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job last time.
Did a good job.
With what they had.
So does he need to get like a dedicated, like a crew, like dedicated for the bulky, like, because he's obviously still has to have his regular crew doing the daily, pickups of regular trash. So he has to get a dedicated crew that's the bulky waste pickup people. But it's like, hey guys, how do you want 4 or 5 weeks worth of work, and then it's over?
It's not only the crew; it's also the trucks, because they
okay.
used to have, under the prior trash collection for residential, he
Right.
had rear loading trucks, which is what they use, rear loading trucks,
Right.
and they get pretty beat up.
All
from
right,
both
now he
ways.
doesn't have
Now
those.
it's all side loading automated.
Yeah.
So unless I'm wrong, at least the last time we did, I'm pretty sure he said he had to rent or borrow 1 or 2 rear loading trucks. So there's a lot of prep he needs in order to run it, which is why, kind of to Don's other question, I mean, really, we'd have to give him the green light, negotiate with him. If we were doing the same thing we've done the last couple of rounds, he'd need at least probably from June through August to probably be prepared for a September collection.
Yeah, I mean, is it as important to do it in a 5 or 6 week period versus a 3-month period? Just because, I mean, he still needs the manpower no matter what, because he can't use his regular trash haulers to do a lot of that. But I don't know. I mean, because we have it in such a tight period, we kind of like it that way because we get all the trash picked up in that 5 or 6 week period. But I don't know if he's willing to cut us a break on something, then I'm open to hear.
I would
What he wants to
assume,
say.
and again, I can't speak for him, but I would assume it might work. I believe that's about the fastest he can go with the crew and truck he
Right.
has. So slower would mean he'd have to keep them. It might cost more because keep them on payroll longer, or they're working half days or whatever. So, but again, those are the kind of things that we'd want to work out.
Or he hires less people and just spreads it out longer.
Yeah, I will say it. I think the trade-off there is going to be people, generally follow our instructions, but clearly some folks, I think if they hear bulky waste is, for the next 2 months, you're going to get more people either putting their stuff out really early and kind of looking visibly, a mess, or you know, there is something about that kind of season that people kind of know, and they follow the map that we did the last kind of couple times that says, oh, they're coming to my neighborhood.
I better get it out there.
But, you know, but again, these are all things that I think we can explore a little more and try to find if there's a better solution. And, you know, we may determine that what we've been doing is the best solution. I think that was why we kind of wanted to.
If we get a list of what other towns are doing, there might be some better ideas that they have. If we could put all that together for our next meeting, and then we can discuss the options and, you know, and the costs that may involve these options too, because, you know, I think each type we do is going to be a different cost. I mean, we averaged last time around, what, 300,000? The year
First
before,
time
though,
was
it was, or the
325.
2 years before that, it was a lot more because we hadn't done it in several years. So I think, you know, either you're catching up and paying more later on, or you're going to just figure it out that it's going to average about $150,000 a year to do bulk trash pickup. You know, if it has to go up to 100, say, you know, with tipping fees now going with everything else, you know, I would like to lock in, and maybe I don't know if it's possible, but we lock into, you know, the next 4 years and say, hey, 2 years here, 2 years. I don't know if they would do that, but I mean, it may be an option where we can lock in at a lower rate to do it.
What's, and we went through some options. What is, if you had to pick the least expensive option, whether it's the most you know, whether it's the most feasible option, what do we think would be the least expensive option? Would, you know?
I mean, again, it's hard to say without kind of costing a lot officially, but I would guess that the least expensive option that still provides people a service would be something like a voucher that covers the cost to drop off directly.
They bring it there, but I think that's an inconvenience to our residents.
But that's the least expensive. But in terms of what's just the
Yeah.
least expensive, no other trade. But everything else has trade-offs, and you know, even the curbside has trade-offs with the condos, the apartments, the others that are kind of either included or not included. So it's you know, again, something we'll continue to explore before we have another meeting.
Okay. Jim, you have anything? All right, so we'll table that to the next meeting. The next thing is the NIPS surcharge revenue, and I know that we had several discussions, and at the which we'll be covering next is at the Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management group. They did have a meeting on August 1st, and
Noel attended.
Noel
that,
attended
so
that.
actually,
Was it live or virtual?
It was virtual.
Virtual.
Yeah. There were a lot of attendees, so if it was live, it would be.
yeah. But maybe you could just give us a few of the maybe a quick summary of that. It kind of ties into agenda item 5, but maybe a few of the other. A lot of them are ones we talked about, but some of the things that other towns are exploring with the NIPS revenue.
Yeah, the town of Vernon was they spoke the most, I think, on their program. So they're working with an organization that works with individuals with disabilities, and they are organizing a program both with education, an educational portion, but also with having working with this organization to pick up NIPS and associated trash on the street. So that he kind of explained how they worked on getting a safety educational marketing piece out there so that everybody knew that this was happening and awareness. And then they worked with the organizations on what the organizations would need in order to do this and all of those things. So he kind of went through that. And then other towns were still in the process of considering things like their pilot programs and things along those lines. I'm trying to think. I believe it was the town of Durham was working with their local high schools to come up with educational programs and outreach marketing pieces and things along those lines. So it was kind of, some towns have decided, but most of them were just weighing their options still, like we are. So.
Well, because just so for clarification for the thousands of people who are watching this, the program doesn't have to directly mean that we have to hire somebody to go and pick up every nip bottle in the town. First of all, the $18,000 we're getting, it will not even cover the expense of doing that. So I think there was some misunderstanding about it. So I want to make sure everybody's clear that there's a number of different ways we can use this money towards making sure we clean up the town from litter, and from hiring somebody to pick up to putting money towards a machine to pick up, towards even hiring somebody who's a recycling specialist who can help us with that. But I think there's a number of different avenues. Sean, did you have anything that?
No, just that, yeah, I mean, I know we've talked about it before, but in the language of the actual bill, it does, it says, including but not limited to, it lists a lot of those, whether it's equipment purchases or direct cleanup, like you said, or any of the like, or educational programming. So I think those are all still on the table as potential options. I know we did talk, I think during this agenda item, maybe the next, at our last meeting, a little bit about food waste diversionary programs and possibly putting money towards that. That's something I did come with some additional information on because I got a lot of great information from the city of Meriden when I talked to their city manager recently. So I was going to maybe talk about it at the next item, but we could talk about it now if you'd like.
We can talk about the next item because I think that will tie in. But like I also like the idea what Vernon is doing. The only thing I would be concerned about is the safety of individuals on the roads, and it's usually the busier roads is where most of the nip bottles are. So I would be a little concerned about that.
No, when you were when the people, I mean, I know probably most people are like us that they're talking about ideas, but did it sound like most of them were in the direction of trying to spend the money cleaning up, or other types of programs, or are they all sort of like that may be an option, that may be another option?
It was very spread out, and they touched on a lot of different things. I think it was Middletown touched on food waste. So there were a lot of different things that were touched on during the meeting, but Vernon had already had it fully, so they had presented first.
Is that a meeting that we could watch? Is it online that we could?
I don't know if it's recorded. I'm not sure if they record their meeting. I think they do record them.
Yeah,
Yes,
it was on the website.
I believe I recall them hitting record and.
You can find the link if you just send it to us so we can.
Absolutely, I can ask him if he has it. Yeah.
I will say the other thing we noticed, I think it's in the minutes, or at least Middletown and I think Manchester, so some of the larger cities, because we know they're getting more money than we are. It does seem like they're the ones that had a little bit more flexibility in order to say, maybe we could justify spending it on a position, because like a position obviously has that recurring aspect. You can't hire someone and say, sorry, we ran out of money, 9 months from now. So I think both Middletown and Manchester had explored spending the money on a recycling coordinator. But to your point, we're just not, unless we triple the number of NIPs that are purchased in this community, we're not going to have the money that would make that really justified. And,
Right.
nor do I think it's necessary.
No,
I think some of those larger communities are obviously getting more money, and they're able to say, you know what, maybe we could spend this $60,000 on an individual to do a variety of stuff for us. So,
I think. I mean, we all understand it is an issue. That's why the state put this nickel charge for each bottle, and I'm hoping that in the future we don't get any more money than what we're getting now. Because that's a lot of. That's quite a few over. When you're talking over 300,000 nip bottles a year being sold in Cheshire, that's quite a bit, and then. I don't want to say disturbing, but it is a little bit when you think people, throwing them out the windows as they're driving along. It's a dangerous thing. So, all right, this will be another thing that we can table. I think this is going to be an ongoing thing. We're going to have. We really only got one check for what, 7,900.
it's technically two checks because there were two distributors. One is the bulk of it, and one was a smaller, $500 or something. So, but yes, combined. We expect those twice a year. But again, it's also in terms of time pressure. Again, we want to use the money and respond, but It is going into a special revenue fund. It doesn't lapse with the budget year or anything like that. So you have time to determine exactly. It's just going to sit there and in the pot until we're ready to spend it.
And like in terms of equipment is there anything like an attachment you could put on the back of a truck that can just go and suck them all up? Or I don't know. I mean, rather than get a big truck that's cost $300,000, I mean, I don't know if there's something.
Yeah, we explored a little bit again, and we don't. With every piece, you look at some of the smaller stuff, sort of like Bobcat size and smaller. There were some curb, or sidewalk, almost like vacuums, almost like
Right.
you'd see with the spinning brushes that I remember George and I had kind of looked at. But maybe if you're, I don't know, I'm thinking like a West Hartford area or something with a number of kind of brick sidewalk areas all connected, that might make sense. We kind of have these stretches, but not maybe enough to justify a whole piece of equipment that way.
Mhm.
Plus, then you got to load it up on something and drive it to the next place you're going.
Right.
But the other piece of, I guess, equipment that I've seen some towns have talked about are those, and I don't know how their efficacy, but the nets that can go into your catch basins to try to catch debris.
Right.
I think we talked about that at the last meeting a little bit. Unfortunately, of course, with leaf season,
Yeah.
it
They're
catches
gonna
everything.
have to be cleaning those out
But
all
then
the time.
you've got to, right, and I mean, we do have a vac truck. I don't know how it would, if it could handle those or not. I don't know the different, capabilities.
They were able to handle luminary bags. I know that.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
1 year, so
they'll clear everything out of that catch basin. They're not going to target nips in any way. So, but certainly, there could be maintenance pieces for that truck that might cost every bit of what we're doing for
Do
nips.
the normal street sweepers, they'll pick up those bottles, right? The
Yeah.
street sweepers.
But
Yeah,
it
as
has
long
to
as
be
they're
in
in
the
the road.
street.
Has to be in the
street.
road. But as we know, a lot of them are just right on the
Where the
side of the
grass
grass
is.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's where you're gonna have to figure out how to do that.
It might be interesting to just try and coordinate with a few volunteer groups and see on any given Saturday just how much they could accomplish, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Picking up just bottles and stuff along the side of the road.
Well, we could talk to the
It may be-
sustainability team too.
Yeah.
True. I mean, it may be that that would be enough.
Right.
For
Could we
over
do it?
several weekends or something.
Adopt the highway type program in Cheshire where everyone's like,
I mean,
you get the strip of Route 10 from Academy Road to Old Town or something, something like that.
But let's not forget though. I mean, this isn't just once a year because you can pick them up once and then a week later they're all out there again. So
Absolutely.
it would almost have to be an ongoing
Well, that's-
process.
Right, and that's what I'm
Um,
thinking about is as much like on the this would be your area, and if you want to coordinate doing that once a month, once every couple months, whatever, but it's not like you get congratulations, you have all of Route 10 from Hamden to Southington, go.
Yeah,
Presumably, we don't have the manpower in
Right.
Public Works to be doing this on a regular basis.
But
no, it's
those
a
are
great.
small groups.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a great idea that you could, and then the money could go towards the supplies and the equipment that you need. I mean, it could be everything from the trash bags to maybe some of those picker
Right,
devices
yeah.
that people use. Rubber gloves, whatever else people need the volunteers use. If you did, 4 townwide cleanups a year, and you had them-
T-shirts.
T-shirts. I mean, I think all of that supporting the effort
Safety
is probably
vests.
good. Safety vests.
Safety vests is more
I mean,
important.
Pretty soon you could spend, $18,000 over a year. I mean, that I think is it's certainly an option to consider.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. I mean, there's a number of ways and there's a number of groups out there that, like that's what Vernon is doing. They reach out to one group, and I think we have many groups in this town that might be willing to do it, whether it's Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, teams, sports teams, or
And I think one thing that we, and I don't know, I must say, I haven't particularly seen it, but obviously other people, maybe Public Works. If we could identify areas that, I mean, there may be certain areas of Route 10 or others where like it just doesn't really exist, right? But there's more concentrated areas. So if we focused on 5 or 6 areas where the concentration of those nips find their way, we don't have to worry about cleaning all of Route 10 or all of, if we could focus on those areas, then we may only need a few groups or rotating groups to cover those areas. And it may not get, obviously it's not going to get 100% of the bottles, but I think if you had these groups and you could hit 60%, pick up 60% of them or 70% of them, then I think that's about all you could ever really hope to. You're never going to get them all. So, but if you could get the bulk of them, or at least on a rotating basis,
I mean, because realistically, I think people who live on busy streets, if it's on their in front of their house, they're picking them up.
picking up
Am I
already.
correct, Sean?
Right.
We pick them up at the library.
They are.
There's a lot at the library.
Really,
They
there
throw
are
them into the-
pockets. Yeah, and I was going to say that. I think
bushes.
we're often thinking of streets, but I would point out, even that I just pulled it up to confirm, the Vernon program, they're not doing streets, probably for some of the safety areas. They're doing town parks and town public spaces,
Oh, okay.
but not
Makes sense.
kind of what we're maybe picturing of curbside right on the edge of the road.
Do
I mean,
have
every
a lot in
community
those
is different,
parks?
but we have, you'll have stretches.
In the parks and the open space, you got like the Casertano parking lot up there off of Marion, and that's, always a trash haven.
Yeah.
There's right near where Jarvis intersects is kind of a little.
That's where the trucks go.
Fire.
Yeah.
Across from where the school would go.
Correct, yeah, there's that old house there.
Right,
next to there.
I mean, I can say the formerly state-owned parcel on the north end it goes down to some lowlands, and there's just some areas where, I mean, I'm assuming probably high school kids or others have just gathered over the years, and there's trash and things. So, I think those are areas that they would be ripe for kind of a hey,
Yeah.
let's do 3 hours of a cleanup,
Right.
get 20 volunteers and clean it up. You could probably
And that's what I was envisioning. Like there must be focus areas where the bulk of this stuff occurs. Obviously we're not going to pick up everything along the roads, but there's got to be places where people congregate and this occurs, or or just by flow they find their way to a certain area.
And I think it's safer too. I think everyone expressed concern about the
Right.
the actual truly street side. Unfortunately, the
Yeah.
most common roads you're identifying are also usually going to be our collector,
Right.
busier roads. As we talked about last time, you don't see these as often, like the end of a cul-de-sac.
Well, if we did have groups out there organizing to do this, I would hope that we would have probably some support out there as far as public safety goes.
Right.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
could.
We could spend $25 an hour
Yeah.
renting a cruiser. Oh,
30.
sorry, $30 an hour.
30, that's just the cruiser.
Right, that's just the cruiser,
The
right.
other part's expensive.
Yeah.
Can you get a town discount?
Exactly.
We can do anything.
Yeah, so we'll table this as well. I'd like to try to come up with something by the end of this year, though, on this, so that we can present it to the council, so that we can start moving forward by next year. Because the second check should be coming probably in January, would you say?
I would think probably in the fall, because the first one came in March.
April.
April.
I would guess October or November.
Okay, so by then we'll have 2 checks in, and I think we should try to figure
So
out
it
how we're
says right
going
here, beginning April 1st, then
Every 6 months. Yep.
Yeah, this is the. And
Okay,
it also says that, just as Sean had mentioned, municipalities are receiving surcharge, mainly use of funds for environmental measures to reduce solid waste generation in the municipality or the impact of litter from the solid waste. So it is opened up to more than just picking up nips.
Right.
If you wanted to supplement that with, I don't know, education,
Right.
prevention, I don't know what we can do to prevent that.
Don't throw your nips out the window.
Yeah, really.
Recycle.
Seriously.
Recycle.
All right, so if we can try to table this to the next time, but let's try to work on coming up with some kind of solution by the end of the year, so that we can move it forward. All right, that brings us to our third and final one, is the discussion of joining the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management Group. And I know, we've had a lot of discussion about it, and I mean, I think every time we meet, there's more and more towns who have joined this group. At last I heard it was over 70, but it could be more now. It sounds like something that we really should be a member of, because we've already sat in on one of the meetings to get some ideas. But it's an important group to work with, to work towards sustainability in this community. So, Sean, you wanted?
Yeah, I can give just a brief, and Arnett or Noel, feel free to jump in. But we did, some of the questions that were raised last time, we confirmed there's no obligation, there's no monetary. In fact, I think what was the quote, Arnett, at the end? There's even something that says.
He had responded to me and said there is no commitment to do anything.
Yeah, there you go. That was a quote, which I thought was just a great quote.
Yeah.
Here's-
We're in.
right up our alley.
Yeah.
Perfect. But no, it was So just again, to confirm,
Yeah.
there's no commitment.
And
But-
it opens us up for some potential grants.
Right, and I
as
think,
well.
for all the reasons you said, I think there's a good group of communities already on board and a lot of great ideas being circulated and shared, and we can participate in that and benefit from that. So it was certainly staff supports it, and we would recommend, advancing it to the council if you're willing to do so tonight. And I did mention, and I'm happy to jump into it real quick, I did have a conversation with the city manager in Meriden, if you'd like me to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that program they did, because it was related to this and something we might want to consider. Again, I will not present the full thing because I have the PowerPoint and everything that the Meriden Town Council received and somebody else presented. So it's not my presentation to kind of present, but I will give a quick summary after a good conversation with the city manager on this. Let me see if I can open this up. Is there anything up there yet?
This is PC.
PC. Oh, it's because I'm not plugging it. Oh, there we go. There we go.
There we go.
All right. And again, these are the slides, but there's also a good brochure, but these have some great photos in it. So the short version is that Meriden participated in a pilot program, what they call their outer district. Outer district for Meriden is actually their kind of more single family residential homes, probably more similar to most of Cheshire. That it was an area that they targeted for a food waste diversion program. And so, like I said, not my presentation, so I won't go through the whole thing. But to show you the pictures, basically what happens, there's orange bags and green bags. And what they did, let's see if I can find the photos for you here. Basically, it was all voluntary, but they had kind of amazing participation. He said that the average was about 50% compliance, but for a few weeks they were running at like 77% compliance from households, which is pretty amazing. But basically, the short version is you throw your regular trash in these orange bags that they were provided, and you throw your food waste only in the green bags. They all go into the same trash can. It's no different receptacle. So that question we had about how do you handle, here's the picture I'm trying to get to. It all gets sorted on the floor, right? And this is run by, they use HQ up in Southington. HQ partnered with the program. And you can see there the orange bags of trash. Those would be some green bags of the food waste there, it looks like in that photo. They learned a few lessons along the way. One of them that he said was, as I think it says here, the manual sorting wasn't really a sustainable process, but HQ has implemented some technology that will divert them automatically. So it got rid of this, I think, this sort of very manual exercise that they were going through there.
Just dump it on the floor
and just pull them out and sort them. But what was interesting, I think, and again, from a cost standpoint, and he said, don't quote him on the numbers, but it was around, like they're paying about $100, $105 for their tip fee. But the tip fee on the food waste that's diverted was like $40. So on that weight, you're saving, let's just say 60%, or in that case, $60, $65, every ton of food waste. So it really adds up, and we know food waste is heavy as well. So that was kind of the discount. They did it through the grant that Deep was offering. It's about a $40,000 grant. Those are still out there. Communities can do this if they'd like.
What's the grant paying for?
I think that's a good question. I think it's paying. It may be. I think it's paying for
Materials?
It might be. I think it's the materials. At the end, they talk about some of their lessons. And again, I hate to quote these because it's not my presentation, but
Sure.
They have subscription trash there also. So I think what's happening is they're talking about selling the bags themselves, to the consumer for 20 cents and 30 cents, I think, for regular trash, and 20 for the food bags. The city would cover the full tip fees at 110 for waste disposal to the general fund. I mean, they have a little bit of a different financial arrangement, right, versus the customers paying on their own. But for us, the benefit of that would be we could say if we could, divert this, not only is it good for the environment, of course, but if we could save on that chunk of tip fee that's going to the lower cost solution, I think that's the
Big numbers, really.
it could really add up. I'll show you real quick.
Where does the food go?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, while you're looking for that, we had actually looked at this program last year, and it was suggested for Cheshire that the grant funding would pay for food waste and trash bags for participating homes, would conduct a dynamic education and outreach program, it costs money, and then all costs for processing and transport of co-collected bags of food
Yeah.
scraps.
So this is the brochure they used. You'll see it was sponsored by they're in South Central COG. And then it says quantum biopower. I mean, I think to answer your question, the food waste have value in terms of being able to go to one of these bioprocessing.
You know, that's interesting because they say pizza boxes in the blue recycling bin when that's not what we're told.
Yeah.
I think as long as they're clean and
They have to be
dry.
clean. They
Yeah.
can't have oil on them. I think.
So if you ever get a pizza box, it doesn't.
It doesn't exist.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Unless they're leftover.
Some people rip the top
business.
off.
Yeah.
Some people will rip it in half and recycle the
That I
top.
think you're okay
And
with.
trash.
That's a good idea.
And because it's the bottom that gets the oil on it, but the top usually doesn't get oil. So I've seen some people do that where they'll rip the clean top part off and recycle that. But
Right.
That makes sense.
So, and again, it's another opportunity for educational, kind of do these in these sort of waves from time to time. Here they're explaining it. This was a pilot program. It was 4 months. Residents in HQ's outer district will be provided 32 orange trash bags and 16 green food scraps bags. He said they were also provided, if they wanted them, this food scrap bucket container thing for people's homes. And then again, here were the instructions for them. The orange trash bags, as I said, were for trash, and food scrap bag can just go right together in the same trash.
Yeah, so you basically tell them, the people, that they're going to need 2 trash cans in their kitchen or whatever too.
Right, and that's where I think for food waste they had it's like a bucket type, another
Yeah.
trash container.
Yeah, you probably always need 3 because you need your waste, your normal recycle, and then your food recycling, right?
Yeah, I mean there needs to be some way to keep them separate. That's for sure. So
And we have a little compost
Yeah.
container in our backyard. We just have a little pail on the kitchen
I did
counter.
the exact same thing.
right.
But I would prefer to have it. I mean, I don't use the compost. It's just piling up, really. So it'd be great for it just to leave the yard.
Right.
And plus, you can't compost everything, and you can put
Right.
all
This
food
is
waste
meats
in
and
Yeah.
fish and
Right.
oils,
onions and
yeah.
yeah.
So again, we'd have to work with. I mean, clearly, in our case, we have to work with AJ. We've gone that route.
Right.
And again, this is really just bringing back. I know there was a question at the last meeting, and a possible program, whether it's through grants, whether it's through NIP revenue, whether it's just something the town wants, the town council is interested in embarking on, we could delve further into. In this case, again, as I said, HQ, was providing this, and this is really the customers in that area paying for HQ.
Let me ask you, is there a way that we can do something where we start with the schools, where it might be a little easier to, when kids are having their lunch, if they, okay, any food you don't eat, put in here, and the rest of the stuff goes in here. I know that there were schools up in West Hartford who had done that, and they were pretty successful at it. And it's teaching the kids the values of recycling. But I mean, I'm just wondering if you start somewhere, then once you teach the kids, they'll bring them home to the rest of their families, and that's where I feel it's a good place to start. But
And that's good. Is the Board of Ed and their trash, is that included in is that, are we, anything that comes out of the schools, that's all part of AJ's picking that up, or that's all part of the contract,
or the
right?
budget in terms of the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, he provided prices, and then the Board of Ed picked up on the price.
that falls under their budget.
Right,
Their
okay.
budget, yes, but the contract is, unless they didn't want to use them.
Yeah, our contract is only for town. and
Town, right,
condos,
okay,
whatever.
but they're under the same arrangement, although they pay separately. There's a separate Board of Ed trash pickup budget and a town services. Because, it seems to me like that, right, that if anyone's generating trash that's food related, right, it would be the Board of Education. I mean, there's gotta be a ton of food trash that comes out of all those schools. I can tell you right now, my kids are there, a lot of that food shows up on the plate and just goes straight into like that. These kids, they don't even eat it. It just comes out and it just goes right into the garbage. And so they they come out with their stuff. So there's got to be a ton of food that just gets
Well, I
absolutely
mean, plus
wasted.
plus what they'll have to do is they'll have to have a monitor there at the trash can. As the kids come and say, okay, well, you put this here, and after a while they'll get used to that. I think it's something that maybe we should look into as well. I mean, I think there's a lot of different sustainability things that we can do as a town. I always say, let the youth lead us, because I think they're the ones who get it a lot better than the adults who just are, I admit it, too lazy to clean out their stuff and just throw it in the garbage and say, who cares? I think, the young people will get it a little bit better. And I think maybe we should look at that. We'd have to find out if AJ was,
Right.
AJ may say, hey, how much is this going to cost me now? And,
What do I-
and
Well, right, or again, depending on the program, if a school, what you're describing, it's potential that you could just compost it there on site. So if they purchased composting, bins or custom equipment to allow for it to just not even need to be. I mean, this is really designed because you can't just divert it and not have a place for it to go, of course, right? So this is curbside. You've done your part in your kitchen. You've separated your trash from your food. It's all gone into a bin, and now you're out of the picture, and it's in the town, because the town pays the tipping, disposal fees, is saving the money on the other end. I mean, in that case, you could save the town money if you were able to divert the food waste and potentially have a large composting program.
right, yeah, I mean,
And you don't even,
sure, yeah.
AJ would be be a
Yeah.
non-issue.
yeah, it'll just be less weight that we're trashing. So I think that's
but as we bring this up, you realize how much weight all that food that comes out of those schools must
Gotta
be
be a lot.
incurring.
It's gotta be a lot, yeah. I mean, I think the school idea, running this through the school somehow is a good idea. I just also think that, we should also think larger, for the town, as a whole, of
Right.
course, at some point.
I think once you teach the youth, then you say, okay, now we're going to start bringing it into the homes now.
You got
And-
to teach your parents how to do it.
but almost. It's
I
just-
mean, there's too many places in the budget where you could save potentially this much money, other than letting people go. It's worth it. I think people would understand it's worth it from that perspective, as well as, despite the potential hassle.
Restaurants are a big focus too.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
But I think I agree with you. But I think ultimately, right, the issue like any program like this is, and it sounds like maybe they had participation, but the other thing is you'll see, I think you see it here a little bit, is that it starts off with, this is a great idea. You got massive participation, right? And after a few weeks, it's like, well, it was a really good idea, and it'll start to, whatever happens with any of these environmental, it has to be something that people can do easily, conveniently, and consistently, in order to make it successful. Otherwise, I think you may see a situation where you start off really strong and then it might start to fade away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there'll be an educational aspect to it, of course.
Yeah, but it has to be something that people can stick with.
Right.
It did look like they had I know Tim said, Tim Kuhn, who's the city manager, said they were pleasantly surprised by the results. And I think some of these numbers, 98% of homes returned at least one bag, 24% of available food scraps captured. And then here in the survey of 110 respondents, how was your experience?
over 70%.
I originally wanted to participate and I want to continue to participate.
Yeah.
I originally didn't want to participate, but I do want to continue. And only these two blue ones, I originally wanted to, but I don't. And then the people that never wanted to and still don't want to. So it's pretty good
Yeah, no, that's
results.
How long was the pilot being? Like, how long?
I think it said 4 months. They started in April. I'm not sure if it's
And where are they now? Are they going to
Spring.
continue it, or are they?
They're trying to expand it, and he said they're actually looking at ways to expand it to their inner district, which is more multifamily homes and apartment complexes and others. So there's different things they have to do for that to work. But yes, he said they were looking to expand it to the inner district.
Four months is a long time.
Yeah.
It's a good amount of time
No,
to
that's-
test something.
Getting back to the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management. This is something that came out of that, or are they're part? Meriden is part of that, and I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, if not, I mean, if they are part of it, maybe they are going to share it with the group. But I mean, these are types of things that I think we could really get from this group is ideas like that.
Yeah, I think it's the ideas and the sharing of information. I mean, the grant was called the Sustainable Materials Management Grant, and it was offered by DEEP. So it is,
Okay.
there's definitely, I think it was one of the major initiatives, and one of the other initiatives was establishing a coalition of towns to share
Right.
things.
Right. Okay. So I mean, I would just like to see if we can get a motion to send this to the council for
Participation.
to join the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management. That's a lot.
I would move that, I think, sure. So,
Take a second.
I
All
think
in
in
favor?
light, oh yeah, sure. I think in light of the fact it's not gonna cost us anything, we don't,
We don't have to do anything.
We don't have to do anything, but I think it's
Most important.
right, but it does sound like it's an organization that, at least for now, is growing with other municipalities coming in, and it could be a resource, a source of ideas and and information that may be useful for us. So I don't see any reason not to join it. And the question, obviously, who's going to be the person? Obviously, somebody who's going to have to attend these things. But it's, especially if these things are virtual, maybe that's not such a burden.
Yeah, they're virtual and quarterly. So
Yeah,
that was, I
okay.
think, another question from the last meeting. So the full meetings, because they have subcommittees, this was a subcommittee meeting
Yeah.
for, I think it's their recycling subcommittee, but the full meetings are quarterly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are important for us to. I mean, if they're recording them, at least to view them when we can. And I think we can get some great ideas, I think, from this group. Before we adjourn, I know last meeting we were discussing, we're going to have to start looking at replacing the recycle cans. And, how, is this for next year? Are we looking at that? Or a
No,
couple
I don't-
years?
I don't think it's that soon.
Okay, so 3 years, maybe 2 or 3 years?
The warranty on them,
They've got a 10-year warranty, and they're, I think we started in on that in 13.
Okay.
yeah, so I think it's next year that the warranty's up, but if the conditions are, I mean, the one we have in my house and the ones I see around are largely in good shape.
Yeah.
And we can still continue to.
Do we have
purchase
any
and replace them.
ones still left over that, I know if people need another one or something?
We've had to buy them.
We had to buy 'em?
We buy
We buy them in lots of like 144 or something.
It's probably more expensive to buy them that than get them
Yeah.
for the entire town, but.
But I think, like Sean said, they're in largely good shape, the ones I've seen. So
Yeah.
I think you'll get another, 5-8 years.
I think
out
the
of
trash cans might take more of a beat because they're picked up every week.
the weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And and I think George is right though that at some point, like with a lot, you ever have these kind of bulk purchases? I mean, most of them are of the same age, right? There's some supplemental ones, and there's been those that go missing or have been hit that get replaced with a brand new one. But I think they'll start to fail when they do all at once, and that's what George is saying. Is at that point it'll probably make the most sense to do it in a full dispersion.
So as long as we are aware that somewhere in the next few years, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
place a large order for these.
It's about
What was the cost
$500,000.
originally?
$500,000 to $600,000.
Yeah. So that would,
That's a lot of plastic.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. How are we gonna recycle all that plastic?
Just take care of your recycling.
Yeah.
Do your
Well,
part.
that's the other thing. They probably pick them all up and recycle, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
They make them again. All right. Is there anything else you guys? No. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. In favor, aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.